Hello, my dear friends. A very warm welcome to newspaper Analysis Townhall. Today, 8th of August, and today we are going to have a look at various important articles from the Hindu newspaper. First one, is Indian economy perfectly balanced? This is a very important article from prelims as well as mains point of view. In this article, we will have a look at how Indian economy is performing, various macroeconomic indicators like fiscal deficit, inflation, wages, employment, etc., how they are performing, or is India going through a Goldilocks zone? Okay. Second one, RBI's monetary policy, where RBI decided to keep repo rate unchanged. Yes. Third one, Bihar's intensive revision exercise and the impact on the migrant workers. How migrant workers are going to be impacted by this exercise and what is the way ahead. Fourth one, yes, here we are going to have a look at the updates regarding the tariff impacts on India and also an expected meeting of President Putin and Trump, which is expected to be held next week. And last one, India and Philippines relationships. Okay, let's start. Yes, Finance Ministry last month called Indian economy in a Goldilocks situation. What is a Goldilocks situation? Basically, Goldilocks situation is a alignment of various macroeconomic indicators. For example, economic growth, moderate pace of growth, low inflation rate, low unemployment rate. So this is a just right scenario for an economy where the growth rate is also moderate. It is not too high because too high growth rate has the chances of increased inflation. So a growth rate, inflation rate, and also a lower employment rate. Last year, India had 7.6% GDP growth, one of the highest in the world. India became the fourth largest economy, 3.6 trillion economy 2024 and pay. And also unemployment level are also little lower. Inflation has also fallen. So it is said that India is going through a Goldilocks phase. But the picture is not that simple. It's complex. So here we are going to have a look at various macroeconomic indicators, how they are representing the situation of the economy. First one is inflation and its impact on the wages. In India, we measure inflation through CPI, Consumer Price Index, and this is the inflation which the retail consumer feels. Okay, it is targeted by RBI and the target range is 4%. It should be 4% with a margin of plus minus 2%, that is 2 to 6%. CPI has been higher, that is above 6% in the last year also, but now it has deaccelerated. The trend is, see, it was 6.21 in the October month, but now it is steadily falling. And in May, it came out to 2.82. Also, the food inflation, food index makes almost 50% part of the CPI. In the CPI basket, 45% is of food. So, food plays a major role in CPI inflation. Food inflation was high of 11% almost in the month of October. And this has been trend since the 2022. High CPI and high food inflation index. But now it is also going down. It has fallen to less than 1% in the month of May. So these are the good news for Indian economy. That is, CPI and food inflation are coming down. See, what is the impact of inflation on your salaries, your wages? Yes, the second thing which the article discusses is the impact on wages. See, nominal wages and real wages. What is the difference? For example, if I'm getting a salary of 10,000 rupees. Okay. Now, say for example, if I buy only one good, say sugar, for example, its price is 50 rupees. So I can buy 200 kgs of sugar. Now, say my salary increases to 11,000. It is an increase of 10%. And the price of sugar has increased to 60. So how much sugar now I will be able to buy? Almost 183 kgs. My salary has increased, but now my purchasing power has reduced. Earlier, my purchasing power was 200 kgs of sugar. Now it is 183 kgs of sugar. So this is the nominal. This is the nominal wage I'm getting. And what is the real wage? Real wage is in terms of sugar. That is the purchasing power which has gone down. So nominal wages are the actual amount of wages which are paid while the real wage represent the purchasing power of those wages, accounting for inflation, because there has been high inflation. So the article says there has been an increase of 9.2% nominal level salary in 2023, but the real wage growth was only 2.5% because of high inflation. So बाहर से दिखेगा कि 9.2% nominal salary increase हुआ है, economy is performing good, but reality is it is only 2.5%. So there has been a term called silent squeeze. Silent squeeze. If my real wage is not growing, therefore my purchasing is not going up. If purchasing is not going up, therefore there has been a squeeze in my purchasing of the essential goods also, like food. Okay, so the purchasing power of household had barely improved. This is called as silent squeeze. You can use these terms in your answers also directly. So these are the first two macroeconomic indicators. High inflation in the past has been because of the food inflation, basically unseasoned rains, supply chain disruptions, global commodity prices fluctuations. Also, there is a view that we should, instead of focusing on CPI, we should focus on core inflation. What is core inflation? Core inflation is basically when out of CPI we subtract food and fuel inflation. बिकॉज देखो फूड एंड फ्यूल इन्फ्लेशन जो है ना वो सीजनल है, बहुत टेम्परेरी होता है. समटाइम्स कोई ग्लोबल सेटबैक हुआ या मॉनसून खराब हुआ तो फूड इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ गया, फ्यूल इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ गया, तो इससे ओवरऑल इकोनॉमी का आइडिया उतना बेहतर नहीं आता है. सो economists have suggested that we should focus core inflation, which do not take into account food and fuel inflation. Also, RBI is going to soon release a paper on the inflation targeting, because this inflation targeting of 4% plus minus 2% is up to only March 26. After that, it has to be changed, or if it is to be continued, then it has to be enacted again. Okay, this is the food and core inflation. Now, after these two parameters, the wages and inflation, third one is income inequality. How we measure income inequality? In the past discussions, we have discussed about Gini coefficient, right? According to Gini coefficient, inequality has fallen in India. We discussed about Gini coefficient. Score is 0 to 1. As the score increases, inequality increases. But India's score has fallen from 4.489 to 0.402. So it has fallen means inequality has fallen. But there is a catch. What is that? This Gini coefficient is measured only for the income which is taxable. That is, it uses the official data, official documents. So only the taxable income is being reflected in this, excluding the majority of informal sector, which accounts for almost 90% of India's economy. So it does not represent the wholesome picture. Also, there is an argument that post-pandemic recovery of Indian economy has been K-shaped. What does K-shaped recovery means? Basically, this is K-shaped, okay, where one sector of economy is going up while other sectors are going down. That is, they are not recovering to the level what the one sector is doing. So it is saying that some sector has benefited disproportionately due to COVID. For example, IT sector. So it says number of billionaires in India has increased, while poor and middle class has stagnated. Their real wages have not grown, or they have deteriorated. So basically showing inequality is on rise. In official data, official documents, nominal wages is counting, does not represent the true picture. Here also, Gini coefficient does not take into account the informal sector, again not representing the wholesome picture. This K-shaped recovery has also benefited certain sectors and certain people, but not the entire strata of population. So this is the third data which has been discussed in the article. Okay, now the fourth one, deficit. See, a prudent fiscal deficit is very important for an economy. Fiscal deficit क्या होता है? Basically, गवर्नमेंट को कितना लोन लेना है अपने करंट एक्सपेंडिचर को मीट करने के लिए. टोटल रेवेन्यू कितना आया, टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर कितना किया. एक्सपेंडिचर से फॉर एग्जांपल इज 100, revenue is 90. Now 10 rupee have to be borrowed. Now these 10 rupees can be from two sources. One is non-debt capital receipts. For example, I do disinvestment in Coal India tomorrow. The government does, I do not do. Government does disinvestment. So it is getting, say, for example, 20,000 crore rupees. It is the capital receipt, but it is not creating any debt. So it will not be counted in fiscal deficit. Okay, so for example, 2 is coming from here. So rest 8 has to be borrowed, and that will be the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit after COVID, during COVID, I think it increased to 9%. So in 2023, the fiscal deficit was 6.4%, which is consistently now falling. And the estimated for 25-26 is 4.4%. So this can come in exam as a statement in prelims, that fiscal deficit has been consistently falling since last 4 years or say 5 years. Then it will be true. Okay, in exam हमें लगता है कि if consistently words are used, then it is false. No, it is true. Fiscal deficit is going down. Similar is the trend for revenue deficit, primary deficit, effective revenue deficit. What are these? Fiscal deficit is mix of both revenue and capital. Revenue deficit is total revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. What is primary deficit? This article talks about primary deficit also, where the primary deficit has gone down from 3% to 0.8%. What is primary deficit? Primary deficit is the current year's borrowing. For example, the 8 I borrowed. Okay, now the expenditure of 90 rupees, the 100 rupees which I'm doing, out of these 100, approximately 20 I am spending on the interest payment. Yes, पहले से मैंने जो लोन ले रखा उस पे आई एम पेइंग इंटरेस्ट, तो इस 100 में से 20 रुपए तो मैं इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट पे ही खर्च कर रहा हूं. So in calculating the primary deficit, we subtract the interest payments. That is current year में how much I'm borrowing to meet the liabilities or the obligations of the current year only. पीछे का जो लोन ले रखा उसकी इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट को छोड़ दो, करंट ईयर में मैं क्या ले रहा हूं, which is primary deficit, which is here 0.3%. No, primary deficit 0.8%. This is effective revenue deficit. What is effective revenue deficit? It was a new term coined early 2010s. This is revenue deficit. Now in revenue deficit, there are certain expenditures which I make, which the government makes, which are used in the creation of capital asset. Now that has to be subtracted because a capital asset is being created, so it cannot be calculated as revenue expenditure. So this is effective revenue expenditure. So the trend for all the deficits is they are consistently declining since the last 4 years. Keep this in mind. Now the next thing which it discusses, debt to GDP ratio. See, what is debt to GDP ratio? Every year we are accumulating the fiscal deficit. Every year I'm borrowing 8 rupees. So over a period of time, it accumulates, and after accumulating, the number becomes big. So this is the total debt to the GDP. In India, currently it is 81%. That is, if our GDP is 100 rupees, I have a debt of 81 rupees. According to Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act, it should be 60%. And current is 81%. So this is beyond limit. Okay, so this is also running high. What happens when the deficits are high? Basically, when the deficits are high, what happens is there are various impacts on the government. How? What is meaning deficit high? India is borrowing 8 rupees. From where it will borrow? It will borrow from banks or say private lender. And if it is borrowing from banks and private lender, then the banks will be having less capital to lend to private sector, because bank also have limited capital, right? So if government is the major borrower, then the private sector is left with very less capital. So it is crowding out the private investment. This is how high fiscal deficit can crowd out the private investment by increasing demand for funds by the government. Also, it puts pressure on interest rate, because if the buyers are more, interest rates will increase. Okay, so therefore, if private investment is going down, it has impact on job creation, also economic growth. See, अब तक जो बहुत फ्लावरी पिक्चर लग रही थी 7.6% डेटा से and coming down inflation से, here we can see the reality behind the numbers. Okay, if fiscal deficit is high, therefore government will be having less space for critical public spending on social sectors. like education, healthcare, infrastructure. So it has to be kept in limit also. Okay, so this is the Goldilocks zone of Indian economy, which has been the issues highlighted under this. Finally, the article says, if there is a volatile food inflation which erodes the purchasing power, then income disparities are there. Number of billionaires have increased despite growth. Growth हो रहा है, but number of billionaires increasing, and also the lower and middle class का stagnant हो गया है. Tight fiscal space, because fiscal deficit is already high, so we cannot borrow more to spend on health, social sector, education, infrastructure. So it paints a picture for more complex than the harmonious Goldilocks. So there are various challenges which are there. Okay, this is about the article. All this data is very important. It can come in means also. This once a question came on potential GDP. So a question can come on Goldilocks also. Is India going through a Goldilocks phase of the economy? So here we will have to also quote this data, the growth data, and also the underlying challenges and issues. Let's move on to the next article. Yes, RBI in its August meet of bi-monthly monetary policy decided to keep the repo rate unchanged. I think it is a good decision also, because in the last, since February, 100 basis point ka cut ho chuka already. 100 basis point basically 1% from the repo rate. The trend in the repo rate. Again, prelims mein question aa sakta hai. See, if you see this period, the repo rate was 4%. Okay. Now the inflation in this phase was very high. It even crossed 6% continuously for many months, which is outside the limit of the inflation targeting by RBI. It prompted RBI to increase the repo rate. How repo rate and inflation are linked? Basically, when repo rate is increased, because here inflation was high, so RBI decided to increase the repo rate. Repo rate is increased. There are two kinds of impacts. Say investment and consumption. If repo rate is increased, investment is likely to fall. Why? Because जब interest rate increase हो गया है, तो investors are not likely to borrow more money from the banks, क्योंकि interest rate high है. So investment is going to fall. If investment is going to fall, therefore employment is not going to rise. Employment नहीं बढ़ रहा है, it will also fall. So therefore wages नहीं होंगी लोगों की, तो demand कम होगी. अगर demand कम होगा तो inflation will go down. Similarly consumption, अगर interest rate बढ़ गया है तो my EMIs जो cost जाती है monthly वो ज्यादा हो जाएगी, EMI बढ़ जाएगा. Second, मैं जो consumption loan ले रहा हूँ वो भी नहीं लूंगा क्योंकि बहुत महंगा हो गया है repo rate की वजह से. So it is likely to reduce the demand in economy. Therefore, inflation will go down. But as the inflation came down, now since February, RBI has decided to decrease the repo rate. Okay, so it has been fallen from 6.5% to 5.5%. Okay. RBI also highlights certain issues in the lending, because see how the lending has been happening in the economy. Because like lending is good, for example, lending is done for investment or consumption, therefore it is driving the demand. But if the lending is less, therefore there is issue of demand in the economy, and demand plays a major role in economic growth. Okay, the data given here is the loans given to purchase the consumer durables had contracted about 3% compared to previous year. मतलब कंजम्पशन पे कम हो गया है जो क्रेडिट दे रही है बैंक्स. सेकंड, हाउसिंग लोन हैज आल्सो fallen from 36% growth to 9.6%. Vehicle loan also slowed down, which can also be seen from the quarterly results of various motor companies. Loan to industry have also gone down from 8.1% to 5.5%. तो इंडस्ट्री का कम हो गया है, व्हीकल कम, हाउसिंग कम, कंज्यूमर ड्यूरेबल कम. बेसिकली व्हाट इट शोज, subdued demand outlook. Demand outlook is not good. So what happens? So in this scenario, RBI says, it does not say directly, but what it means is stronger policy framework across domains and not just limited to monetary policy. खाली मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी से काम नहीं चलना, बिकॉज जो सप्लाई साइड मेजर्स हैं, मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी हैज very limited role in this. So now the fiscal policy has to come into effect. Fiscal policy regarding tax reduction on petroleum products, GST rationalization. So various taxes and revenue related things, that is the fiscal policy of the government. Now it has to play the role, because monetary policy has already reduced the interest rates by 100 basis point. Now alone it cannot increase the demand in the economy. Government, that is the fiscal policy, now has to come into play. This is what the article says. Next article, Bihar migrant workers. Very briefly we will see what is the issue. We all know special intensive revision in Bihar, 61 lakh voter have been deleted from the electoral roll of the Bihar. Okay, under section 19 of the Representation of People Act 1950, a person must be ordinarily resident in a constituency so that he can be included in the electoral roll. वहां का ordinary resident होना चाहिए. Basically, what it wants to ensure that the voter maintains real ties with the constituency. ये temporary basis पे नहीं हो सकता है. This was also said by the Supreme Guwahati High Court in Election Commission of India versus Dr. Manmohan Singh. The term ordinarily resident shall mean a habitual resident of the place. Must be permanent in character, not temporary or casual. It must be a place where the person has the intention of dwelling there permanently. अब इससे इशू क्या आता है, सोच के देखो आप लोग. एक वर्कर है जो माइग्रेट कर गया. नाउ से फॉर एग्जांपल he has come from Bihar to Delhi. Now what he does, 5 months he work here, then 1 month again Bihar, again 5 months here, 1 month again at home. He is permanently looking to dwell in Bihar because he's going to his home, his family, his mother, his wife, his children, but he's working here, he's spending most of the time here. So where he will be called as temporarily working or temporarily staying, here or here, where he had decided to permanently settle, here or here. So this is not that easy to decide. This is very subjective. And all these laws, this Representation of People Act of 1950, it was made that time when the migration due to the work related, employment related things was not that prominent. But now that has increased. According to 2021 periodic labor force survey, India का 11%, 11% of India's population has migrated due to employment related reasons. And if they are doing it employment related reasons, they are doing this. Okay, 15 crore voters. This is a big number. So these are the various issues, various confusion how to decide where he is going to stay. Okay, section 20 says a person shall not be deemed to be ordinary resident just because he possesses a dwelling house therein. Okay, just एक घर है आपका वहां पे रहने के लिए, उस वजह से it will not be the ordinary resident position of the worker. Okay, अब what is the issue? अब बिहार में for example they are going to vote, but the election commissioner or say an expert say that they should vote in Delhi because they are spending most of their time in Delhi. Okay, this is good enough, valid reason. But regional political parties are also raising issues regarding inclusion of such people who are working there and inclusion of their name in electoral roll. Why? Because they say they do not understand the politics of that region. They are not understanding what are the issues, what are the requirements of that state. Migrants do not understand the political issues in their state and should not be allowed to vote in these elections. So what should be done then? What should be done is basically there was a pilot project, multi-constituency remote electronic voting machine. There should be some mechanisms where a migrant worker should be established that either he will vote in Bihar or he will vote in Delhi. On the basis of that, irrespective of where he is staying, for example, he is entitled to vote in Bihar, but he is staying in Delhi. So there should be provision of remote voting. He need not go there, because if he will go there, he will not go. Why he would spend so much of money? So there should be provisions of remotely voting machine system. It was also started by Election Commission, but then it was dropped because of concerns raised by political parties and administrative challenges. And this is a good thing which should be done. Also, in urban areas, we see 50% of the voters do not vote. So to promote the voting, what Election Commission should do, it should ensure strict enforcement of the statutory holiday, that is on the day of the voting. Also running of special buses, train, and also this remote voting system. All these steps have to be taken until and unless जब तक ये सारा issue properly resolve नहीं हो जाता. Remote voting, I think, is the way ahead. This should be revived. Okay, I think this is enough for this voting issue of the Bihar, where we have various sections of the RPA also, various suggestions and court judgment also. Yes. Next is some updates regarding the India-US tariff war. This is not a war, it's a unilateral decision of US only. We are not running into any war. Indian government has clearly explained and clearly put his point that why we do not support these tariffs, and India has called them unreasonable and unjustified. Okay, here we will have a look at various sectors which are going to get impacted. The first one, auto component sector. In 24-25, total export of Indian auto component was 22.9 billion. US alone has share of 27% in this. US is a big market for Indian auto component. Okay, India's export was 27% of the total, but import was only 7% from the US. So we are more dependent on export to US than import in terms of auto components. Okay, secondly, and also various experts are now saying they have to strengthen the very sector by diversifying the markets. We have to look for other markets also, other countries. Also, in gems and jewelry, there was an update yesterday. The experts have suggested that the manufacturing on gems and jewelry should be shifted to such countries like Mexico, where the tariff is low. If we are exporting from India to US, tariff is say 50%. But now we set a manufacturing base in Mexico and exporting from there. A tariff is, say, for example, 10%. This is also what can be done, shifting of the manufacturing bases. Second, engineering export. Again, the data is $20 billion was the export. These are the big industries, big export. Ready-made garment. US has share of 33% in India's total garment export. Basically, these sector I think बहुत ज़्यादा impact होने वाला है. Pharma sector में US का 40% रहता है share, but it has been exempted as of now. It does not come under this 50% tariff. The sector has been exempted. And this Trump and Putin, yes, this is a good news. I think for the world economy and geopolitics also. It is expected that Trump and Putin will meet next week. So what will happen? What can happen if they meet, for example, and there's a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine? Then this tariff war can end. Tariff war can end. But President Trump yesterday only, he said that even if the Russia-Ukraine war ends, there's no guarantee of removal of the penalty tariff on India. Okay, we will have a look at how things will evolve from here. This last topic for today, India-Philippines relationships. Okay, the state visit of Philippine president, you all know, basically strategic partnership agreement was signed. And this new president of the Philippines, also in India, they have taken a very strong position against Chinese incursion in South China Sea. Before going into various agreements which have been signed, let us see what is South China Sea and the issues with it. This is China. इसके ऊपर पूरा का पूरा China है यहाँ पे. Okay, this is Vietnam, this is Philippines, this is Malaysia. This is the South China Sea. China says there is a line. He called it 9-dash line. This line. Can you see it? Yes. Basically, covering almost the entire South China Sea. They have called it कि ये हमारा है. This is China's territory. 9-dash line in the South China Sea. It claims exclusive rights over the South China Sea, this 9-dash line. And this line has not been recognized by international law, the UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea. Various, there has been conflict. So say, for example, Philippines says according to international law, this yellow boundary you can see, this is the exclusive economic zone of Philippines, which extends to almost 200 nautical mile from the boundary of the Philippines. This is of Vietnam. This is of Malaysia. But this 9-dash line is taking into account the entire region of these countries into China's territory. So this is a major conflict. Various important and strategic islands are there. This Spratly Island is there. Paracel Island, Scarborough Shoal. South China Sea is very important from China from the perspective of trade, strategic access to water, and also minerals and resources. So in India, Philippines, various agreements were signed. A naval exercise was also conducted. It was criticized by China. Okay. This UNCLOS tribunal arbitration in favor of Philippines, calling on China to respect the multilateral order in Indo-Pacific. Multilateral order is as in, that is by adhering to the UNCLOS laws. That is respecting this exclusive economic zone lines, these, not the 9-dash line. Also, Philippines is also the first export destination for BrahMos missile, और उसने interest दिखाया है various military hardware also. Various visa and direct flights exemption. The trade is one aspect which is very low, which should be increased. Also, the Philippines is the incoming chair of the ASEAN in 2026. And there has been talks which are expected to revive on ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, 𝐼𝐴. So this is about India, Philippines, and South China Sea. So these are the articles which we discussed today, very important from prelims as well as mains point of view. So now we will see you tomorrow. Till then, good luck, goodbye. Thank you.